And what they're doing is they're sifting through a zillion frequencies and assembling only a certain number of them, the ones that produce a picture. For example, if you're watching a television picture,
Yes.
like your favorite show, well, that television is capable of picking up frequencies all through the TM band, but the television band, the TV band, but it's screening out all of the other channels, and it's showing you just the latest episode of the Seinfeld reruns that you're watching. So you're just watching that one show. It's screening out all the other shows. Similarly, when you're listening to something on the radio is screening out all the stations except the one station that you're listening to. But all the other stations are still there. And if you change the dial, you'd get those stations. So that's what the brain's doing. It's screening out absolutely everything else. It's screening out the past, it's screening out the future, and it's screening out all other versions of our present self. So everything is possible because everything is based on just frequency. And so what remote viewers are doing is they train for a long time to get the brain to ease up on what it's doing. It's normally not supposed to let you see the gazelle that was there yesterday or the elephant that will be there tomorrow. It's going to show you the lion that's in front of you today and only that. Well, the remote viewer is trained to get the brain to lighten up and to allow in some of the frequencies that it normally screens out. Now, those frequencies come in as vague, fuzzy images, but the remote viewers get really good at focusing on them. They get to know what they look like, the feel of them, and they lock onto them, and they concentrate on them, and they describe those things. And those things are the remote viewing stuff. So they have their eyes open. It's a normal waking state of consciousness, but they're describing these images that you normally would screen out. And, everyone else would normally just not do that. But every once in a while, the brain will allow in a strong pulse, and that's where your intuitions are. For example, let's say you suddenly feel that your boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse is in trouble, or your child is in trouble, and suddenly you get a pulse. Boom, someone's in trouble who I love. Well, where in the heck did that come from? What that happened was the brain was saying, said, hey, this is too important. We got to let so some of it squeaked through. That's where all that stuff comes from. So anyway, so what the remote viewing process is, these military procedures are, is there are procedures that are developed to enable that screening process and that sort of cataloging process of what is actually being perceived to be highly ordered, very highly structured, so that we get the material, we get the perceptions, and record it in a certain manner so that we can assemble it all later and actually look at what happens. Now, people like Dennis Smith and Dick Allgaier are so good at the use of these military or military-derived methodologies. When they perceive a target, they do it all live, recorded on video, under totally blind conditions. So when you're watching them on the video, you're watching something that was recorded live. And now you may know what the target is, but it's clear that they don't know when they're doing the sessions. And it's right on the edge of your seat you're sitting because they're so good. It's at least as good as if they were there with their own physical eyes and watching it. It's actually a little better because they can move through walls, they can move back and forward in time, but the descriptions of the stuff that you know are there, the verifiable stuff, is so accurate you literally drop off your seat. That's what the best do it. They're what some people call scary good. And so that's what basically remote viewing is. And the latest project that we had that was released literally yesterday is on the Phoenix Lights.
Yes,
so what we have is, the Phoenix Lights is something that a lot of people have been waiting for, because that was a project that was, that was one that was waiting to happen, because here you have an anomalous series of lights that were connected to what looked like the underbelly of a large ship that flew over 5 states, including Sonora, Mexico, and 4 states in the United States, over a period of a number of hours between 7:30 and 10:30 p.m. Arizona time. And it was witnessed by potentially hundreds of thousands of people, including tens of thousands of people in Phoenix, Arizona, for like a long time. And that included the governor of the state, the then governor of the state, Fife Symington, who was a former Air Force officer and pilot. And the people on the ground clearly saw that the lights were connected to a physical object that was so big it was blocking out much of the sky above. So, now for 6 months the U.S. government said nothing about it, nothing. And then they sent out a flight lieutenant who said, oh, those things, they were just some flares that we dropped from some military aircraft during training exercises. Now, anybody who saw the actual stuff realized that was just ridiculous. Now, the governor himself said it was ridiculous. He said it certainly was not flares dropped by training aircraft because flares don't fly in formation. They saw the underbelly of the craft entirely. So it was really waiting to happen that this project happened. So we sent the remote viewers back to look at what happened. Here in 2015, we sent them back to 1997 under totally blind conditions, and they didn't know what they were assigned to perceive. They just did the procedures, and like you get when you work with the best, they came in with totally duplicating data. They both reported the exact same thing, and we have not been giving them extraterrestrial targets for years and years and years, so they were not expecting it. But they saw the extraterrestrial craft. They clearly identified it as an extraterrestrial craft. And then, in sort of leading up to this this event, I've been announcing that we have a surprise. And the surprise I'll tell you now is that one of the remote viewers, both remote viewers perceived the same being, including the being's helpers, on the craft. But one of the remote viewers got real close to the being. Well, they both got real close, but one of the remote viewers actually entered into a dialogue with the being. Now, Pat, the reason this is so unusual, it's unusual for us because normally in our remote viewing stuff we don't get into conversations with people, but these extraterrestrials in 1997 were waiting for us. That was the surprise. They were waiting for us, meaning in 1997 they knew that humans from 2015 were going to visit them on the ship with remote viewing. Now, normally physical humans, and this is virtually 100%, physical humans cannot tell if someone's remote viewing them, period.
Right.
So if you hear someone say, "Oh no, I can tell," remote viewers have been coming in and watching me. I know that. That person, in my humble opinion, has got to have some medical stuff dealt with. It's just not happening because it's just delusions. Because nobody in their right mind, no remote viewer in their right mind would ever remote view a neighbor or anything like that. It takes a huge amount of effort to get a project started, to put the proper controls in, and you'd never waste it on the amount of time and effort involved. You never waste it on something like spying on a neighbor or something. Just crazy. Just totally, it's so beyond. And if you actually knew what goes into each one of these projects, you know that it would be just so totally crazy, it just never would happen. But secondly, we have never, ever, nobody has ever had an experience where remote viewing a human being, the human being turned around and looked at the remote viewer. You do apparently leave some type of residual element of yourself at the target location, but advanced extraterrestrials are different. They'll turn right around and look at you. And that's what happened on the ship over Phoenix. We had both remote viewers go in, and one of the remote viewers got really close, right up to the guy's face, and that guy just started a conversation. He knew he was being watched. He started up a conversation, and that's what's live recorded on the DVD, or actually right now it's on a video on demand. We haven't actually got the DVD launched yet. The DVD will come out in about a week or so, but for right now we have the video on demand, so people can watch it immediately right now. And it's hosted through Vimeo, so it's really high quality. And it's astounding to actually see that happen. all recorded live. This is a path breaker for everybody.
So, Courtney, a question I have for you is: it sounds like there are no boundaries with remote viewing. Time is not really a consideration. Then, is that true?
Yes. You cannot say that there are no boundaries for remote viewing. But what you can say is we have not yet run into any boundaries.
Okay.
So we don't know of anything that we can't do. So it is really an amazing thing. So, but absolutely, in terms of the normal things like time and space, we have found no limitations with respect to time and no limitations with respect to space regarding what can be remote viewed.
Gotcha.
Now, various projects that we have done, just to give you an idea of the magnitude, the scope of all of that, is we of course have the Phoenix Lights, and that's just out like within the last 24 hours. We have Aliens on Iapetus, and also we have the Face on Mars, both currently and in the past. And in both the Iapetus thing and the Face on Mars, those beings that were on those places were human, just like us. They looked like us, they talked like us, and they did not see us when we were remote viewing them. The mainstream stories about how the Great Pyramid of Giza was constructed are total fairy tales. I mean, they don't correspond at all. They're impossible with regard to how the pyramid could have been built, because it's just not physically possible to do it the way mainstream says it was done. And the data that we have is totally okay. It was built with extraterrestrial technology, but with a human slave workforce, but using extraterrestrial technology. It was being orchestrated by some actually malevolent extraterrestrials that were manipulating a vast number of humans, including a human elite, and it was eventually broken up by another group of extraterrestrials that came in and basically chased off the first group, and that ended that whole period, and the pyramid culture collapsed after that. And our documentary is very clear on that. And then we had a documentary before that on Atlantis, and Atlantis, what we were calling Atlantis, is actually some underwater anomalies, including some what are obviously ancient ruins of a huge city on the bottom of the ocean, about 1,000 miles west of Portugal and Morocco, and 3 miles deep. And they were very clear on Google Earth, and we were investigating what those things are on Google Earth, and we got the answers, and it was a human civilization. It was us, our ancestors, and they destroyed themselves about 70,000 years ago. They had a level of technology about 100 years more advanced than we are today. They looked like us. They sounded like us. Their technology was very similar in the sense that they have, large flat panel computer displays and things like that. And they destroyed themselves through a secret project, and that documentary is now available for free. We posted that for free up on YouTube. So if you go to our website, www.farsight.org, that's FARSIGHT, like seeing far.org, because we're a nonprofit. Just click on Atlantis in the nav bar, and you can watch it right now for free. So, but we've also done scientific investigations on the nature of multiple universes, like parallel realities, climate change, the origin of the asteroid belt, which was actually a planet that exploded. That confirmed the theory that was developed by Thomas Van Flandern. He was a very mainstream physicist who was head of his Department of Celestial Mechanics at the Naval Observatory. And it was very much opposite the mainstream theory of the origin of the asteroid belt, for which there is not a shred of evidence. That is that the asteroid belt was the refuse or the junk that was left over from the primordial solar nebula from which the solar system was formed. And that's just completely ridiculous, because the asteroids, for example, Thomas Van Flandern assembled a huge amount of detailed planetary data indicating that that's bonkers, and that there was a planet there at one time and it did explode for whatever reasons. And the solar nebula idea is impossible, because the solar nebula is made up of dust, and the asteroid belt is made up of huge rocks, like Ceres asteroids. I mean, they're huge rocks. And you cannot make a rock out of dust. Dust bounces around, but it doesn't make a rock. To make a rock, you have to have a gravity well. You have to assemble the dust and put it under compression with a gravity well. That requires a planet. And then the rock forms. And then to get a rock out of that, you got to blow it off the planet or blow up the planet. You got to get it off the planet. But that's how you get a rock. You don't get a rock out of the solar nebula. That's just dust. So anyway, and also the asteroids have, almost all of the asteroids have obvious evidence of being exposed to extreme heat that's glazing on the surface. So whatever happened in the distant past, and something blew up, and that's where the asteroid belt came in. And Mars apparently was very close to that asteroid belt. I mean, to that planet when it exploded, because half of Mars is heavily cratered, and there's some big gashes on Mars indicating it was really close. And the other half of Mars is without any craters, so it's crater-free. Also, the cratered side of Mars is about 1 kilometer to up to 3 kilometers thicker than the uncratered side. So whatever exploded was really close to Mars, and it pelted Mars with a lot of junk. And that was not the end of life on Mars, but it was a bad day for sure. And that is what actually caused the Cydonia region to be abandoned, because of the tidal waves, the huge water displacement that happened with regard to that. So that came out in our Cydonia Mars project, the inundation with all the water. But that did not end life on Mars. After some years, maybe 100,000 years, I don't know how long, but humans rebuilt Mars, and we know that they rebuilt because after that there was a nuclear explosion on the surface of Mars. And among those people who are open-minded and willing to look at the data exactly as they are without bias, it's not in dispute. And you can read about that in a book that's just recently been published in March of this year by John Brandenburg, called Death on Mars. And he's a mainstream physicist, used to work at Scandia Labs. What it's called nuclear forensics. When you look at the nuclear isotope traces in the atmosphere and on the surface, you look at the data and you say, what is that evidence of? And the evidence, the nuclear forensic evidence, is absolutely clear. At some point there was a nuclear explosion on the surface of Mars, not buried inside, but right on the surface. And that's what blew off the rest of the atmosphere on Mars, so that it was no longer a place you could walk around and breathe. So anyway, but we also did a project on a base that's actually operational right now on Mars. And we have a really good picture that was supplied by NASA JPL Mail Space Science Systems of a nozzle that's shooting off a spray, and that nozzle is connected to a pipeline, and the pipeline goes into a dome. So we did a remote viewing on that. The picture is really clear. You can see the shadow underneath the spray. And there's another couple domes right around it. Anyway, we did a remote viewing project on that, and that, in fact, is an operational base. There are people on Mars in that base right now. So that was a very interesting thing. It's also very interesting that while we have the original NASA JPL Mail Space Science Systems photo of that location, you have to sort of dig it up out of the NASA website, although we give the links to that on our website. But if you go to the Google Earth Mars option and go to the exact same location, it's been censored on Google Earth. So, and it's a very clear censoring. And you can't say it was a glitch in the data because we have the original photos. And so we show the censoring. So you can clearly see that there is something there, and that there is an attempt to cover it up in a venue that most people would go to, such as Google Earth, the Mars option. Anyway, so we did something on that as well. So the basic idea is that we have done a huge number of projects, and our Multiple Universe project, our Atlantis project, the Great Pyramid of Giza project, the 9/11 project, the Climate Change project, Exploding Planet project, even the base on Mars. They're all grounded on solid photographs, and almost all of them are dealing with non-extraterrestrial type targets, except for the base on Mars. And then these three these three new projects that we just had, which is Cydonia Mars, the Face on Mars, Aliens on Iapetus, and the Phoenix Lights, which is only 24 hours old. It's a really, really interesting project. Anyway, so we have lots of stuff, and we're the only place anywhere. There is no other venue where these things happen.
Oh, well, I mean, your site is just amazing. You want to take a call? We got a caller that wanted to talk to you for a little bit.
Sure, it's all right.
All right, hold on, no problem. Caller, good evening. Welcome to Fringe Radio. We're on with Dr. Courtney Brown.
Hey, Pat. Hey, Courtney. It's Bill.
Hi.
Courtney, I got a question for you. What is the type of training that is involved to become a remote viewer? And does the Farsight Institute, are you directly involved with training of future remote viewers?
Yes. Let me say that we don't hold public classes for remote viewers right now. But some of the CRV people do, and we have links to those people on our website. However, what we do have is a huge collection of free instructional material, including videos as well as audio lessons. You're talking well over 22 hours of stuff, 27 lessons. I mean, it's a huge amount of stuff. And it's all hosted by YouTube, plus a free printable text. So the cost for that is free. There's no cost at all. So anybody can go through the procedures and learn them. And we're updating that constantly. We have a new series that we're developing called the Young Masters. And these are young people that we're training that we individually select to learn remote viewing. And they do not have to. Young people are economically fragile, so they are not paying for it. So, but we are in training them, and we're starting to include. We're trying to put up approximately one new lesson with them, featuring them doing remote viewing a week. We've got 2 up there now, and more are on the way. Some of them are actually already done. We're just waiting. We're trying to release them one a week. Basically, we have a Friday release schedule. So we release videos of a variety of different types on Fridays. So we have something called the Farsight Scene, which is the Farsight Scene Video News Blast, which is something that we release every Friday that summarizes what we've been doing for the week. And that also we release another video usually every week on a session that has been done blind on video live by one of these young masters. But we're not holding classes and asking people to pay tuitions and coming and do that. Some of the CRV instructors do that. And so if people are interested in that, they can do that. But almost everybody starts with our free stuff because the recorded instructional materials are really complete, and they're right there, and they're free, and you can start today. And it's all very reliable, hosted by YouTube, and the text is printable. And we both have advanced and as well as basic introductory stuff. I mean, the whole thing is there. But for people who want sort of personalized attention and feel like paying for it, they can go to some of the CRV instructors and so on. A lot of people like to think about getting instruction with Farsight because they see all the stuff that we do. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do everything that we do and do the instruction as well. So we really refer people that want personalized attention to the CRV people, and everybody else we say, just start with our free course. That's probably going to be all you really want anyway because it's so complete. And then, but the young masters that you will be seeing, those are not people that called in and said they wanted to take courses. Those are people that we particularly chose for some reason, and we want to work with them. And in some cases, they're just doing it for free. In other cases, we're actually paying them because they're economically fragile, and people who are very young simply won't. They have survival needs that are too severe, so they won't do anything unless they can get paid $50, $100, or something like that.
Right,
So,
right.
so we're doing
Now-
that type of thing.
Now, has a remote viewer ever encountered difficulty with an event, maybe with the possibility of seeing something in a parallel or dimensional time existence, or on a different plane, and can they differentiate between the two?
Yes, we run into that, and we have done studies experimenting literally just on that, such as our climate change project. That was a project that was looking for climate change between the years 2008 and 2013. And we were explicitly investigating the idea of there being parallel realities. We also did a project called the Multiple Universes Project, all of which these are available for free on our website right now. The Multiple Universe Project was an explicit test for the existence of parallel realities, and it was a test to see if you could predict or remote view the future, if you could control for which reality that you're looking at. And we found a way to do it under a certain, very restricted set of conditions, and it worked 100% of the time. And so it was a confirmation that there are multiple realities. And those things are up on our website now. There's presentational videos for them that you can watch. And there is that. You don't run into the multiple reality problem when you're looking into the past, because when you're looking into the past, you know exactly what past you're looking for, the person who designs the target in the project. Go to our website, farsight.org. and sign up for our free newsletter, because we come out with a free newsletter via email once a week, and we never give out the email addresses for any reason whatsoever, so there's no spam worries. And secondly, to sign up for both of our YouTube channels. We have a science YouTube channel, and you just, on the nav bar, it says the YouTube channels, click on the science one. That's where we have most of our science content. But we have a new YouTube channel where we put edgy art-oriented stuff, from music videos to all sorts of stuff, and that is a new thing, and we're just putting new content on there. So sign up for both, subscribe to both of our YouTube channels. Make sure that you get our sign up, put your email address in for the free newsletter, because we're a nonprofit. We never advertise, so there's no way for people to know what we're doing except if they sign up for the newsletter.
One final question, Courtney. One final question, and I definitely look forward, by the way, to the Phoenix Lights documentary. Do you ever think that mainstream media, the scientific community, and the public in general will ever accept remote viewing as a legitimate application method of credible research?
Oh, absolutely. You see, when this thing all started in the 1990s, everybody was laughing. They were all saying everybody doing this was deluded. I was and still am the only mainstream tenured scholar in any university that does this, although I do not do it at my university. Nonetheless, I'm still the only mainstream academic that studies this. But in the old days, people used to laugh and call people deluded and so on. But now, it's been this way for a number of years now. No one is laughing. Nobody is laughing anymore. So everyone's looking, and those people who had been deriding it and laughing and so on, everybody in that sort of category are basically in a holding your breath mode, sort of the waiting to exhale moment, because the phenomenon has not gone away. More and more people have been exposed to it. We have more and more credible studies, all recorded live on video, so you can see it for yourself. So you really can't deny it because you're watching it, and you're watching it right in front of you. And so absolutely nobody's laughing at it anymore. So yeah, the idea that it will eventually become mainstream is very clear. I was actually having a private conversation. I give talks at major universities, a number of them. Again, I do not do remote viewing research at my university. I'm a mathematician there that works in a social science program. But I do nonetheless give talks at other universities about remote viewing. And I was having a talk with a major university president, the president of a major university. And it was very clear from the president's perspective that he really wanted to keep the remote viewing content out of his university so as to not cause financial problems with donors that would, be upset and say, I'm not going to give you $1 million from my car wash business because we don't like the idea that you have people looking at remote viewing. So, they don't want that type of complication. But the president was glad to see me and glad to have me in his office and asked me all about what was going on. And he had known all about the early projects that were going on at Stanford. And he went, so he was like really fascinated by the whole thing and was so delighted that I was in his office that he could ask questions about it. But then on the same side, he didn't want it known publicly that that the university, had any type of. He didn't want any of the faculty members there to be sort of involved with that type of a thing. So
Right.
again, that was an interesting sort of experience, and I do visit a number of universities. So I'm not saying which university this happened at. I'm just telling you that it's quite clear that behind closed doors, no one's laughing anymore, and it's clear where this is going. But I'm enjoying myself tremendously because it's so obvious where it's going. We keep on putting up more projects one after the other. We keep getting all the support we need to do the next project. And there's no ambiguity where this is going, but it's not happened yet. So it's really a delicious time for us because we sort of know the end of the story, but we're able to enjoy the process of the story. Like let's say you're reading the Harry Potter books. Well, at the end Harry Potter wins, but you're in the middle of the book, so you still enjoy each page as you go through the chapters.
Right.
What's funny though, Courtney? The military had the remote viewing program, and even though they say the program doesn't exist, I bet you that they're still involved in it in some capacity today.
Oh no, it's quite clear that they have a remote viewing project now, and it's much bigger than it was when the original project was closed down. But if this ever comes out as public, they'll close that one down and start up another one. It just, the United States military budget is the largest military budget on the planet Earth. It is larger than all of the other military budgets on the entire planet for all countries added together. So if you took everybody else's spending and added it all together with your calculator, everybody else, and compared it to the U.S. military spending, the U.S. military spending is way more than that. Now, in the U.S. military, the largest single element within the U.S. military is black, meaning the largest single thing in the military budget is something that there's no accountability for it ever. It's just a black box. They say this amount of money is spent for don't ask. Well, they can do whatever they want with that money, and they do all sorts of interesting and wild and crazy things. And remote viewing is part of that package.
Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, Courtney and Pat. You guys have a great night, and talk to you soon.
Bill, as always, take care, my friend. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Some interesting stuff, Courtney. Your website has a lot of interesting things on it. We've just got a couple minutes left. The hour went way too quick. But your 9/11 project, can you talk a little more in detail about that?
Yeah, we've got two full documentaries on that. One on the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, and as well as Building 7, which is right next to the Twin Towers. And the other documentary is on the Pentagon and also the organization of the people who did the entire thing. The basic results from the remote viewing data are very clear about it. Those buildings were brought down and the attacks were orchestrated as an inside job. And it was orchestrated in order to allow a war to start in Iraq. But the basic idea is it was that the Arabic Islamic terrorists were essentially nitwits, idiots, that had been flying Cessna 172s and stuff like that. There's no way in the world they could have piloted those jets, going from 172s, jumping into those jets, and flown them with that level of accuracy, or at all, and hit every one of those targets the way they did. So we did a full project on the 9/11 stuff. I actually went into the project thinking that the story that we were originally told was true, and that this would be a simple thing of just remote viewing the 9/11 stuff and verifying what everybody saw on TV and so on. But the reality is that it's a much more complicated thing. You see, whenever you start a war, you must have an incident. So if you want a war, you must have an incident. This goes back to like Bismarck, who tricked Napoleon III, that's Bonaparte's nephew, who is currently running France, into invading the Germanic states in order to get the Germanic states to unify to create a country. So it was a ruse. He actually created a war. Bismarck created a war to get his own people to have some type of outcome. So World War II, we did not enter World War II, despite desperate pleas by Winston Churchill, until Roosevelt got what he was waiting for, which was the incident in the Pacific. Now, some people roll their eyes and say, "Oh no, now you're implicating Roosevelt on the Pearl Harbor attacks." Well, other people's ignorance is just not an excuse. I mean, this is just people just don't know history very well. This is not a dispute among people who know. For example, if you go on YouTube now, you can find videos by Turner Catledge. I think one is called Roosevelt Hail to the Chief, and another one's called Roosevelt Manipulator in Chief. And it's a documentary series that was hosted by Henry Fonda. And Turner Catledge was the editor-in-chief of the New York Times, and he was a personal confidant of Roosevelt, and Roosevelt told him this stuff personally. So, I mean, this is the editor-in-chief of the New York Times, but they had to have the incident in the Pacific before they entered the war. Otherwise, we would have entered the war the way Woodrow Wilson entered World War I, with heavy domestic opposition, and he's fighting battles both internally as well as externally. And so Roosevelt had to get a major incident, was waiting for the Japanese to do something.
Right.
The only thing that is in historical dispute is whether he knew in exact detail when the Japanese would hit Pearl Harbor. That's in dispute. But that he knew that the Japanese were going to make an attack, that was not in dispute. And they were hoping for it. They were waiting for it.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, he declared war on Japan, Germany, and World War II started, and that was it. And there was no domestic opposition. We had Vietnam War. We had the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. And that Gulf of Tonkin Resolution was based on a complete fraudulent act. There were supposedly 2 attacks by North Vietnamese torpedo boats on the USS Maddox off the coast of North Vietnam. The first attack actually was a very minimal thing with no damage to the USS Maddox. And the second attack, 2 days later, never happened at all and is not in historical dispute. There's no one arguing that. The only thing that is in historical dispute is whether LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, knew he was lying to Congress when he asked them to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. So that's the only thing that people are still arguing about. Did he know he was lying to Congress when he was lying to Congress?
Right.
So,
Courtney, I've got to wrap up. I got to get you back on. Again, the Farsight Institute is where people need to go look at your work. It's an honor having you on. Let's get you back on again. More to cover. I knew an hour was going to be short, but thank you for giving us an hour tonight. I know you're a busy individual.
I appreciated the time, and I thank you so much, Pat, for inviting me on. And again, Phoenix Lights is out just within 24 hours, so that's where to start.
Okay, my friend. Take care. God bless and be good. We'll get you back on again.
Same with you. Take care.
Good
Bye
night.
now.
All right.